G'day y'all, my name is Seb Luca. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon and hello depending on where you are in the world. Today what are we doing? We're doing all things fans and air related. So with that being said, let's take a closer look at what we're dealing with, because the best approach for me will be just to show you. So let's go. So here they blow. Sorry, that's a really bad pun. But they do essentially. They're just bits and pieces which I've pulled together to showcase exactly what sort of fans are out there, both from new, completely and utterly new, to old, back to yesteryear, and how fans have been utilized over the eons, what sort of fans there are, as well as some other bits and pieces which are associated with fans, and many things we all need to know pertaining to fans to better grasp and understand and how effective air cooling has been for so long. So let's take a closer look from the beginning. Let's just get stuck right on in. Here they are, fans, 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 and more fans. Alright, it's not the cream of the crop of the ones I've had, it's just various ones that will help identify the various characteristics of fans in this day and age and of yesteryear per se. But before starting out, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You have to start out with the basics, and the basics are, so starting off, what we got here, no, are not fans, assholes, they're screws. Alright, so screws, use, well, there's plenty here for everyone, so let's have a closer look. We have to start somewhere, but what better yet than the type of screws which are available for securing our fans. It's important to know the difference. There's not much to it. Got heaps of black ones here, some silver ones here. These are your standard sort of big boys or fat boys, you know. I like the slightly fatter ones. They will stuff up the threads, so you have to be vigilant when screwing them in. And also when you're screwing in a screw, don't do it too firm, because you will warp the fan. Here on the other hand are some grommeted, really nice, shiny, sort of bronzy gold, if you can see it in the light, radiator screws as well. They come in various lengths, and they can come in various lengths, but these are your standard variants of the screws that you more than likely will be dealing with at the beginning, okay? Leading to the most recent, that's probably what you're toying with more than likely. So we got ourselves some ARGB SickleFlow 140 ARGB fans produced by CoolerMaster. Okay, there's a bit of a CoolerMaster theme in today's comparison video and or analysis of fans. Yeah, with a closer look at RGB fans, starting off on perhaps the more complex end is the fact that you get, generally speaking, two cables coming off it, and as you can see there's three headers here essentially. That's a 5-volt connection because it's got 3 pins on a standard level, okay? Otherwise a 12-volt connection would be 4 pins, and that's something to look out for, because if you put a 5-volt connection like this onto a 12-volt header on your motherboard, and you have to check in the manual whether it's a 12-volt or whether it's a 5-volt header. If you put a 5-volt connection on a 12-volt header, it will blow the RGB instantly and the lighting per se. On top of that, what we also have here is a additional connection, which is a female variant of that, or that generally goes to the motherboard, and the other one allows for interconnectivity in between the other bits of RGB, so that when you connect to the motherboard you might only have one RGB header. You need to connect all those devices in if you want to control it through any software internally on the system. Otherwise you'll have a controller and or a remote, but magical things that you can do with RGBs connected to music per se and whatnot, and that all has to be done through the motherboard headers, okay? You can't do it any other way, okay? Well, you can, but that's the most effective way for your PC, obviously. Then to continue on, and we're using an in-win variety of fan, okay? To continue on, these are the Jupiter AJ120s. They come in a 3-pack for me. They came in a 3-pack, and they were sort of budget orientated fans. But they, on top of that, the second connection is also very important. It's either a 4-pin or a 3-pin. Generally speaking, a 4-pin is what you're looking for, okay? As you can see here, there's a 4-pin connection that will allow for PWM. And on the basic guys, as opposed to, say, if we grab this CoolerMaster over here, which is just a little bit older from yesteryear, okay, it has a 3-pin. And the difference between that and your 4-pin, okay, which generally speaking you hope it has, because you can always backdate it to a 3-pin header if you only got 3-pin headers, but 4-pin headers are more highly valuable because of the PWM and because they allow you to then control the speed internally through your computer, okay? If it's got 3 pins, it'll be DC, and only select motherboards per se will allow control of the DC through, I believe, a variable voltage. So just in a nutshell, 4-pin allows control while you're on the PC. 3-pin will mean it'll just be running more than likely at 100%. Okay, so that's a nice thing when your system's not under load per se. Then PWM and 4-pin connections are more highly sought because you can set it up much more silently, and then when the system's working or when you're gaming and you got your headset on, you won't hear it that you've got the fans ramped up. Okay, and that's what that in a nutshell is. If you want a more technical explanation, I suggest you watch the Noctua. This isn't a Noctua, but you watch the Noctua fan splitter video, and there's an explanation of PWM in a complete technical standpoint where you can learn about it there. It's only about an 8-minute video, so it's rather short. Moving on another basic that you sort of need to identify are the different types of fan types. And as you can see, we've already got a couple. The only type of fan that we're missing, if we scroll over here, I'll be able to address it right now. We've got some SickleFlow, I believe they're SickleFlow, but more aggressive ones, okay, but specifically designed for radiators. They've got a really aggressive sort of a fin stack, as opposed to if we start out with this sort here, okay, you can see they're much wider apart, and these wider apart fins on these fans allow for higher airflow in the case per se. And by that I mean, generally speaking, this type of fan will have a higher CFN, okay? And the CFN, basically the higher the number when you're looking at specs, means that it allows for higher airflow through the case back and forth, providing that there's no impedance in the way per se. But it means more volumes of air can go through the case, more volumes of air can go through the case. And with one of these, providing it's not smack bang against something as well, it'll allow for more volumes of air to come out of the case as well. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Then if we move on, you get to something, even though these are old-ish, so this fan here, that's another CoolerMaster that's quite old. We saw the 3-pin. This one over here is actually a Corsair old school fan. These are more your hybrids per se, and they in theory, like this type of, more so on the Corsair here, this type of fan structure is more utilized as a hybrid. So it's clustered, but it's still sort of straight and still got some space, this type of effect. And this will allow you to connect them to either or either, but they'll never be as effective as a dedicated high airflow fan. Or if we move from here to some Be Quiets, you can see that they're even more clustered together. They're basically overlapping each other. And the SickleFlow ones I've got over there, connected up to the Tech Intel ML360 Sub-Zero cooler, produced by CoolerMaster as well, have got these, but they're much more curved still and thinner, but you've got more fins, okay? They're much more effective when it comes to static pressure flow. And static pressure flow is when an item is pressed up against something, and how much air it can push through that item. So it's the strength of the air rather than the distance it can travel through, essentially. Get me? Okay, guys? So that's basic. But then the difference between the fan blades, conventionally speaking, you do have abnormalities out of these facts. But with that in mind, now comes down to sizing per se. And when we start to refer to sizing, you got your standard conventional fans, which are generally speaking 120s. You can usually fit 3 120s to the front side of a case, 2 or 3 120s top side, and 120 if you like as an exhaust. But generally speaking, if you're using 120s, you'll use 3 as intake on your case if you've got a standard ATX case, and you'll use something like a 140 over here that we got by CoolerMaster. Again, you can see that it's got that wider fan blade because it's designed to be more than likely an exhaust, or in that sense, like I specified earlier, and you'll use that as an exhaust. So we've got a couple of Be Quiet coolers here, again varying in size. We've got some 140s and we've got a 120, and you can see 120 millimeters circumference from inner fan to inner fan. People say it's a frame, but it's from the frame lip on the inside. So that's 140 millimeters, because from this section here to here will be a lot further. So we can show you that right now. I've heard differently, but if we pop that just there and we take that to there, you can see it's from the frame to the frame at the 120 millimeter mark. This one, on the other hand, is 140 millimeters. Now these are not your conventional fans. As you can see, a conventional fan has approximately a 25 millimeter depth. These, on the other hand, actually these also have a similar depth, but you can get fans which are a lot thinner, which can go up into snugger places, especially in miniature ITX cases and whatnot. They can be more effective, or they may be your only option as well. Okay, but these fans, for example, even though they could probably fit and work well in different areas of the case, they are from the coolers per se, and they're the Be Quiet cooler over there per se. So that's a Dark Rock Pro 4. I've got 2 of them just sitting there. And again, fans apply to coolers, and the same thing applies to coolers, but what you're looking for a cooler is something that can move air in a manner that is static pressure, okay? And that gives you a figure there, and again, the higher the figure, generally speaking, the better the airflow will be through static pressure. So again, sizing wise, you have varying different sizing. Speaking of coolers, there's a throw out to a 77 5-socketed cooler. It's a modded cooler which I used to use for overclocking, basic overclocking, to see the potential of 775 socket CPU. And that's approximately, I believe, that's 90 millimeters, as opposed to these ones over here, which are just smaller 80 millimeter fans. Now, generally speaking, the smaller the fan, the higher the RPM availability will be for it, because the larger the fan, the less amount of air it has to push, because it's a larger fan. Hence, they generally run at a lower RPM, okay? But the larger the fan, also the larger the motor you need, or the better and stronger the motor, and not more power you would need because of the weight generally associated with them. So that's a factor, and you don't generally have, 200 millimeter fans. And if you have a look pulling it away, there's 4 big boys over here, and these big boys, they seem like hubcaps, frankly. Now, as a comparison level to the size of these, to the 80 mil, to the 120 mils, okay, as a comparison level, there is a standard Vornado fan just above it, and as you can see, that fan that's connected to the electrical outlet is roughly the same size as one of those. Now these are your 200 mil, but rest assured that these fans may seem the cable was catching there, may seem the same, but they're not. That's why I've still got this one, which as you can see is stopping slightly differently to the others because of the mechanism, much more effective. Is missing the fan blade, and I still have it just for this specific moment. This one here is not produced by CoolerMaster, but the CoolerMaster fans have a 3-pin. This one, as an alternative, going back in time, not always a bad thing, is actually produced by Antec, okay? And it was condemned in some way because it had a Molex connection, but it wasn't all bad, providing you had access to the case, because it did have the availability to run it on a manual switch, which allowed you to run it in low, medium, or high settings. And for the time, even to this day, on a commercial level, when it comes to case fans, these CoolerMasters came out of a half case, okay, and they weren't anything to shy away from. But this Antec fan, okay, is literally the one that moves the most CFN available of any fan to be tested as yet, okay? So that's why I've got the Antec Big Boy. Literally, it's called the Big Boy as opposed to the CoolerMasters here. And look, on a side note, guys, no offense, unfortunately I don't have any Noctuas to compare to, and everyone aspires. Noctua brand is a very, very well sought out brand because of the quality of the type of fans they are. They do what they have to do, and they do it generally at the top echelon of fan levels in the industry per se. And everyone aspires to be them, and some people end up copying them. And we get away if we can get them for cheaper, like replica Noctua fans. But it's condemned, and people can get in trouble. But this sort of practice has been going around for years, because as you can tell, do these not look identical? And it's literally the same thing. And this has been going on, this shady practice has been going on for years in the industry. It's just more highlighted now because of influencers on YouTube per se. So it's something to look out for. So Molex isn't always bad. Again, we've got ourselves a high airflow 120 here from Antec. Again, a 3-speed with a Molex, and there's your little 3-speed connection. And we've got another one with some lightage, okay, which is a 3-speed as well. And honestly, if you are an enthusiast and you're after the highest airflow, some of these fans from yesteryear may not be as flashy as, this sort of stuff here. And your 200 mils of this day and age. Now these go complete RGB rainbow, but I've got it just set up reacting to the music currently as we speak. Okay, but these will provide some of the best airflow. And if you're after a case and you're just doing a build based on the basic, start out with these. It's not the end of the world, trust me, okay? But then on a side note, what's the grill here? No, we're not having a barbecue, okay? But another item that's sort of important, especially when it comes to fans like of this nature, which can almost like smaller fans and which are higher RPM and that, or in clustered areas where cable management is very difficult. All it is a grill. Something to note regarding fans, that you got yourself sometimes grills, but not only grills come in different varieties, shapes and forms. So here's just a plastic grill, much more convenient to deal with. You can just pretty much grab it and you just pop it on like so, and bang, that's on. There's your protective fan, still got plenty of airflow. On the other hand, you can have things like this, and these are good for filling in old cases per se. Okay, so you got three, I've got three of these covers pretty much attached to the fan, and it can go into a top side of a case where CD-ROMs used to be, and it will update that case, so you can save some money and update the looks and the airflow of the case, because now you can have one and one on the bottom, or two on the bottom like you would, and where the three CD-ROMs would have gone or whatever. Now you can have another fan. Okay guys, so you need to think outside the box sometimes, especially if you're trying to save some money. But yeah, that's another aspect of fans. But I'll tell you right now, the most important aspect of fans is your tools of the trade. And look, to be honest, all you need is one of these. And what's that? A Phillips head screwdriver. Okay guys, so that's your standard one. But if you just want to be pedantic, get yourself also a little Mr. Stubby, especially if you plan to build a few systems, because a little stubby one will always come in handy as well. And get yourself a elongated long one. But most importantly, remember one other thing: they don't cost much more. If anything, make sure the tips are magnetic, because you'll thank me for it in the future. So apart from that, what we have here are some additional really cheap fans. So these are fairly new. Okay, they run on Molex. They'll do the job at $4 a pop. Okay, but they're not whatsoever as effective as, say, your SickleFlow 120 over here, which has about 64 CFN. Okay, so this fan only costs $12 to $15 each. Very cheap, and has 64 CFN. So you don't have to break the bank. When you look at CFN numbers for high airflow cases for the case per se that look like this, remember, this fan is extremely effective. Okay, keep it as a little bit of a secret. CoolerMaster's doing our a favor, because they've increased the quality of these fans and updating the lighting structure. As you could see, the 140 ARGBs already in that case, and I'm using these 120s, if we have a look, over on the rig here, and now you can see them opened up. And again, it's more of a hybrid that we've got here happening, and full ARGB, and yeah, they're pretty sick for the price, guys. So if you want to, on a side note, want to know more information about your SickleFlow fans, then we've got an unboxing video that was released just before this one, leading into this fan discussion and the differences between fans per se. And I suggest you guys check that out for the full unboxing video there, and the specifics pertaining to these very effective budget orientated fans produced by CoolerMaster. Guys, that's the basics and fundamentals of fans. Like I said, if you want to experience a more technical analysis and 1 minute description of PWM fans, then I suggest you check out the Noctua video on fan extension splitters. Splitters, on the other hand, will allow you as well as a throwaway to connect two fans or 3 fans to 1 header as well. So that's something to look out for if needed and you don't have enough headers on your board. You will need fan extensions, and the best ones are probably produced by Noctua currently and the most effective for the price as well. So suss out that video. Another throwaway is your currently only range of fans. They have a new school connection which connects all fans up together, including the RGB, with a clip-in mechanism, and that's really good and keeps things tidy because it doesn't utilize cables. Really good for radiators and whatnot. Something to look out for because they're more proprietary connections, as well as your NZXT RGB and stuff like that, proprietary connections. So be vigilant that 5 volt on the RGB and 12 volt is generally 3-pin and or 4-pin, but proprietary connections may confuse you, so double check always in your specs in the manual per se and description of the items, because it lays it out for you and it explains everything really thoroughly, as much as you need to know to at least get your system up and running in a safe fashion. So with that being said, guys, my name is Seb Luca. Thanks for joining me at the Techness Corner, and peace out, y'all. Bye.